The Art of Strategic Withdrawal. When leaving gives you power, there's a counterintuitive truth about power that most people never discover. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to walk away. Not in defeat, not in anger, but with calculated precision. While everyone else is fighting to stay in the room, competing for attention, desperately trying to prove their worth, the truly powerful person knows when to leave. And that departure often gives them more influence than staying ever could. This is the art of strategic withdrawal. It's one of the most sophisticated power moves in human psychology. Yet it's so misunderstood that most people see it as weakness. They couldn't be more wrong. Strategic withdrawal is the weapon of choice for those who understand that power isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about creating conditions where the outcome you want becomes inevitable. Today, we're going to explore why leaving can be more powerful than staying, how to recognize the perfect moment for strategic withdrawal, and how to execute this technique so masterfully that people will remember your absence more than they ever noticed your presence. But first, let me tell you about the psychological principle that makes strategic withdrawal so effective. It's called the scarcity principle, and it governs almost every aspect of human desire. We want what we can't have. We value what's rare. We pursue what's moving away from us. This principle is hardwired into our survival instincts. For millions of years, our ancestors lived in environments where scarcity was real. Food was scarce. Safety was scarce. Mates were scarce. Resources were scarce. Our brains evolved to place higher value on anything that might disappear. This ancient programming still controls our behavior today, even in environments of abundance. When you withdraw strategically, you activate this scarcity response in other people's minds. Suddenly, your attention becomes more valuable because it's less available. Your approval becomes more meaningful because it's harder to earn. Your presence becomes more impactful because it can't be taken for granted. But here's where most people get strategic withdrawal wrong. They think it means disappearing completely, cutting off all contact, or burning bridges dramatically. That's not strategic withdrawal. That's just leaving. Strategic withdrawal is calculated, purposeful, and designed to increase your value, not destroy relationships. The art lies in knowing exactly when to pull back, how far to pull back, and how long to stay withdrawn. It's about creating space that makes people realize what they've lost, without creating so much distance that they forget about you entirely. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this principle centuries ago. He wrote about the importance of being both loved and feared. But he also understood something subtler. Sometimes being missed is more powerful than either. When you withdraw strategically, people don't just remember you, they idealize you. They fill your absence with their own projections of what you might be doing, thinking, or planning. Let me break down the 5 situations where strategic withdrawal is most effective. Situation 1. When you're being taken for granted. This happens in every context: relationships, work, friendships, family dynamics. You're always available, always helpful, always saying yes. People start to assume you'll always be there, so they stop appreciating your presence. They stop valuing your contributions because they seem guaranteed. Strategic withdrawal in this situation involves gradually becoming less available. Not in a dramatic way, not with announcements or explanations, but with quiet consistency. You start saying no to some requests. You become harder to reach. You stop being the first person to call or text. You create space where your absence can be felt. The key is subtlety. You don't want people to think you're angry or playing games. You want them to slowly realize that something has changed, that you're not as predictable as they thought, that your availability is not unlimited. Situation 2. When emotions are running to high. Sometimes conversations, negotiations, or conflicts reach a point where continued engagement will only make things worse. Everyone is reactive. No one is listening, and productive communication has become impossible. This is when strategic withdrawal becomes a cooling-off period. By removing yourself from an overheated situation, you accomplish several things. You prevent yourself from saying something you'll regret. You give others time to calm down, and you demonstrate emotional maturity and self-control. The withdrawal should be brief and purposeful. I think we should continue this conversation when we've both had time to think. Is much more powerful than storming out or engaging in a screaming match. Situation 3. When you're being disrespected or undervalued. This is perhaps the most important application of strategic withdrawal. When someone consistently treats you poorly, dismisses your contributions, or fails to recognize your worth, explaining or arguing will only reinforce their perception that you're desperate for their approval. Strategic withdrawal in this context sends a clear message. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't need to announce this or make threats. You simply stop making yourself available to people who don't treat you well. You redirect your energy toward people and situations that appreciate what you bring. Situation 4. When you're overinvested in an outcome. Sometimes we want something so badly that our desperation becomes obvious. Whether it's a job, a relationship, a business deal, or any other goal, when your need becomes visible, your negotiating position weakens dramatically. Strategic withdrawal helps you regain your power by demonstrating that you have other options. That this particular outcome isn't your only path to success or happiness. It shifts the dynamic from you pursuing them to them wondering if they're about to lose you. Situation 5. When your presence is preventing growth. Sometimes the kindest and most powerful thing you can do is step back and let others learn to handle things without you. This applies to parenting, mentoring, managing, and any relationship where someone needs to develop their own capabilities. Strategic withdrawal in this context is about creating space for others to grow while positioning yourself as someone they can return to when they're ready to appreciate what you offer at a higher level. Now, let me share the framework for executing strategic withdrawal masterfully. It's called the SPACE method. S stands for signal. Before you withdraw, give subtle signals that change is coming. Start being slightly less available, slightly less responsive, slightly less accommodating. This prepares people for your withdrawal without making it seem sudden or punitive. P stands for purpose. Every strategic withdrawal should have a clear purpose. Are you trying to reset a relationship? Increase your value? Create time for yourself? Escape a toxic situation? Knowing your purpose helps you determine how long to withdraw and what conditions need to be met for your return. A stands for alternative. Strategic withdrawal only works if you have somewhere else to direct your energy. If you withdraw from one situation, but have nothing else to occupy your time or attention, you'll be tempted to return to quickly. Have other projects, relationships, or interests that can fill the space. C stands for consistency. Once you commit to a strategic withdrawal, stick to it. Don't check in constantly. Don't explain yourself repeatedly. Don't waver based on how others react. Consistency is what makes the withdrawal feel authentic rather than manipulative. E stands for evaluation. Use your withdrawal period to honestly assess the situation you've left. Is this relationship or situation actually worth returning to? What changes would need to happen for you to re-engage? Sometimes strategic withdrawal reveals that permanent departure is the best option. Here's what strategic withdrawal looks like in practice. Imagine you have a friend who only contacts you when they need something. They never ask how you're doing, never offer support, never reciprocate your efforts. Instead of confronting them or getting frustrated, you simply become less available. You don't answer their calls immediately. You're busy when they want to hang out. You stop initiating contact. One of two things will happen. Either they'll realize what they've lost and start treating you better, or they'll reveal that they were only interested in what you could do for them. Either way, you win. You either improve the relationship or discover it wasn't worth maintaining, or consider a workplace scenario where your contributions are consistently overlooked. Instead of complaining or demanding recognition, you strategically reduce your extra efforts. You do your job well, but you stop going above and beyond. You stop volunteering for additional projects. You stop being the person everyone relies on for favors. This creates a vacuum that makes your true value visible. Suddenly, people notice what they were taking for granted. Your strategic withdrawal forces them to recognize your contributions by experiencing what happens when they're no longer available. The psychological impact of strategic withdrawal is profound. When you remove your presence, attention, or energy from a situation, you create what psychologists call a contrast effect. People suddenly notice what they had by experiencing what it's like without it. This is why strategic withdrawal often leads to increased appreciation, better treatment, and improved terms when you do re-engage. You've reminded people of your value without having to argue for it or demand it. But strategic withdrawal requires tremendous emotional discipline. You have to resist the urge to explain yourself, to check in constantly, to cave in when people express confusion or displeasure about your new boundaries. You have to be comfortable with other people's discomfort. This is especially challenging for people pleasers and those who derive their self-worth from being needed. Strategic withdrawal forces you to find validation from within rather than from external sources. It requires you to be okay with disappointing people temporarily in order to train them to treat you better permanently. The timing of strategic withdrawal is crucial. Leave too early and people won't notice your absence. Leave too late and the situation may be beyond repair. The sweet spot is when people are just starting to take you for granted, but before they've completely written you off. Watch for signs: declining enthusiasm when you're around, automatic assumptions about your availability, casual dismissal of your opinions, or a general sense that your presence isn't valued. These are signals that strategic withdrawal might be necessary. The duration of strategic withdrawal varies depending on the situation and your goals. Sometimes a few days is enough to reset dynamics. Sometimes weeks or months are necessary. The key is to withdraw long enough for people to genuinely feel your absence, but not so long that they adapt to life without you. You'll know strategic withdrawal is working when people start reaching out to you, when they begin making efforts they weren't making before, when their tone toward you changes from entitled to appreciative. These are signs that your absence has had its intended effect. Strategic withdrawal also has an unexpected benefit. It gives you clarity about what you actually want. When you step back from a situation, you can see it more objectively. You can assess whether the relationship, job, or commitment is actually serving you or just consuming you. Many people discover during strategic withdrawal that they're happier without certain people or situations in their lives. What started as a temporary power move becomes a permanent life improvement. There are risks to strategic withdrawal. Some people will interpret your absence as rejection and respond by pulling away permanently. Some situations require consistent presence and can't tolerate strategic withdrawal. Some relationships are too fragile to survive any distance, but these risks are often worth taking. A relationship that can't survive strategic boundaries probably wasn't healthy to begin with. A situation that requires your constant presence to function properly is probably over-dependent on you. A person who disappears permanently when you're less available probably wasn't genuinely invested in you anyway. Strategic withdrawal teaches you something profound about power. It's not about forcing people to do what you want. It's about creating conditions where they want to do what you want. When you withdraw strategically, you're not manipulating outcomes. You're allowing natural consequences to unfold. People start to appreciate what they have when they realize they might lose it. They start treating others better when good treatment is no longer guaranteed. They start valuing relationships more when those relationships require effort to maintain. Remember, strategic withdrawal is not about punishment or revenge. It's about self-respect and boundary setting. You're not trying to hurt anyone. You're trying to create healthier dynamics and clearer expectations. The most powerful part of strategic withdrawal is what it teaches you about yourself. It shows you that you can survive without certain people's approval, that you're stronger than you thought, that your happiness doesn't depend on being needed by everyone. This inner strength becomes visible to others. When you return from strategic withdrawal, you carry yourself differently. You're less desperate, less needy, less accommodating. People sense this change and respond accordingly. Master the art of strategic withdrawal, and you master one of the most sophisticated tools of human influence. You learn when to engage and when to step back, when to pursue and when to let go. When to be present and when to be absent. In a world where everyone is fighting to be seen, heard, and acknowledged, the person who knows when to withdraw becomes unforgettable. They become the one people miss, the one people chase, the one people value most precisely because they can't be taken for granted. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Not forever, not in anger, but with purpose, dignity, and strategic intent. Master this art, and you'll discover that your absence can be your greatest presence.